So we're going to get into it because we are going to do 15 minutes of reading. We were supposed to do Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I only have the Chinese version. So I'm learning Chinese, so I can use that one. But you're probably not learning Chinese and don't speak Chinese, so there's not much point to me reading it in Chinese. So in the meantime, we're reading this amazing book, which is called The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. Some things I agree with, some things I agree with a little bit less, which is a good thing. It's good to be critical and open to different ideas. So we're going to read the next chapter. So we were reading chapter 15, which was why you systematically overestimate your knowledge and abilities. Today we're up to chapter 16. Don't take news anchors seriously. And this one is called Chauffeur Knowledge. So this one's going to be a lot of fun. Feel free to leave comments. Let me know your thoughts as well. I'll give you my commentary as we're reading through this. And it's always very valuable to take some time to read every day. It is amazing. It's great having you here. Let's do some reading so that we're ready for a day and have some new knowledge. Okay. So after receiving the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1918, Max Planck went on tour across Germany. Whenever he was invited, he delivered the same lecture on new quantum mechanics. Over time, his chauffeur grew to know it by heart. It has to be boring giving the same speech each time, Professor Planck. How about I do it for you in Munich? You can sit in the front row and wear my chauffeur's cap. So this is the chauffeur talking to Max Planck saying, it must be boring giving the same presentation. I've heard it a million times. How about I give the presentation for you? That'd give both of us a bit of variety. Planck liked the idea. So that evening, the driver held a long lecture on quantum mechanics in front of a distinguished audience. Later, a physics professor stood up with a question. The driver recoiled. Never would I have thought that someone from such an advanced city as Munich would ask such a simple question. I will pass it on to my chauffeur to answer. And he passed the question over to Max Planck. And I've actually heard the same story, but with Einstein. And Einstein's driver is the one that points to Einstein and says, let me get my driver to answer that. However, Einstein was extremely well known and his face is recognized by just about everybody. So I doubt that it was that way. So it might have been Max Planck probably who ended up doing this. According to Charlie Munger, one of the world's best investors, and from who I have borrowed this story, there are two types of knowledge. First, we have real knowledge. We see it in people who have committed a large amount of time and effort to understanding a topic. The second type is chauffeur knowledge. Knowledge from people who have learned to put on a show. Maybe they have a great voice or good hair, but the knowledge they espouse is not their own. They reel off eloquent words as if reading from a script. And that's why I like to think that I not only read the book, but I also want to give you my commentary so that we can take it a step further. And then I also like to hear your thoughts so that we can get your comments and ideas, and then we can continue the discussion. We might even be able to set up a book club. Let me know if that's something that would interest you. And hello, Andy is saying on Bigger Live that he really, really loves this. So yes, we are reading The Art of Thinking Clearly. So we want to do the commentary. We want to be able to see whether you want to join the book club so that you can also discuss and read in advance, and then we can discuss the topic of these small little chapters, and we can do different books. Lots of great ideas. But let's get back to the book. Unfortunately, it is increasingly difficult to separate true knowledge from chauffeur knowledge. With news anchors, however, it's still very easy. These are actors, period. Everyone knows it. And yet it continues to astound me how much respect these perfectly coiffed script readers enjoy, not to mention how much they earn moderating panels about topics they barely fathom. Very interesting, isn't it? With journalists, it's more difficult. Some have acquired true knowledge. Often they are veteran reporters who have specialized for years in a clearly defined area. They make a serious effort to understand the complexity of a subject and to communicate it. They tend to write long articles that highlight a variety of cases and exceptions. The majority of journalists, however, fall into the category of chauffeur. They conjure up articles off the top of their heads, or rather from Google searches. Their texts are one-sided, short, and often as compensation for their patchy knowledge, snarky, and self-satisfied tone. So this is really interesting because if you have a look at a lot of the TV nowadays, it is actually scripted. I've seen a montage of TV news broadcasts, and they have these different states and regional channels, and they start with one channel and they are saying the news. And then a second joins in, and it's over the top of the first one, and it continues with the exact same script, the exact same words. And then there are four, then there are eight, and all of those channels are saying the exact same thing in the exact same way. They're just being told what to say rather than that they are actually saying something that has meaning and that they're giving their own opinion to. So that is something very interesting. Okay, so the same superficiality is present in business. The larger a company, the more the CEO is expected to process star quality. Dedication, solemnity, and reliability are undervalued, at least at the top. Too often, shareholders and business journalists seem to believe that showmanship will deliver better results, which is obviously not the case. To guard against the chauffeur effect, Warren Buffett, Munger's business partner, has coined a wonderful phrase, circle of competence. What lies inside the circle, you understand intuitively. What lies outside, you may only partially comprehend. One of Munger's best pieces of advice is you have to stick within what I call your circle of competence. And it's very interesting because in the 1990s, there was a CEO called Dunlap, and Al Chainsaw Dunlap. And Al Dunlap was very good at one thing. He came into a business, he would restructure it, and the main part of his restructuring was firing hundreds of thousands of staff. He would just come in and look at what he thought was inefficient, fire people, and then all of a sudden the company was profitable and would move forward. But only for a certain amount of time. So he would come in, fix it, share price would go up, everybody would be happy, and then he would move on to the next company and do the same thing again, and move on to the next company and do the same thing again. Now, he was generally only good at firing people. And after he left, the company would slowly go back into stagnation because it didn't have some of the people that it needed, because he wasn't really paying attention to who he was firing. He would just take a random block of people and go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and choose somebody, and they would get fired, regardless of whether they were actually competent or good at their job or not. So in business, they moved away from that because they realized that and it became a real big trend. So companies would start hiring Al Dunlap style CEOs in order to just come in and fire people and clean the business up. But soon they realized that it was destroying the company culture. They realized that it was not good for morale. They realized that it wasn't really solving anything. And they moved away from the showmanship of coming in and firing people. For a while, it seemed like it was this brilliant, wonderful idea, but then they realized that it wasn't really working. So you have to understand you have to know what you understand and what you don't understand. It's not terribly important how big the circle is, but it is terribly important that you know where the perimeter is. Munger underscores this. So you have to figure out what your aptitudes are. If you play games where other people have the aptitudes and you don't, you're going to lose. And that's as close to certain as any prediction that you can make. You have to figure out where you've got an edge, and you've got to play within your own circle of competence. So in conclusion, be on the lookout for chauffeur knowledge. Do not confuse the company's spokesperson, the ringmaster, the newscaster, the schmoozer, the verbiage vendor, or the cliche generator with those who possess true knowledge. How do you recognize the difference? There's a clear indicator. True experts recognize the limits of what they know and what they don't know. Very often, non-experts will say that they know something even if they're not sure. You'll often recognize somebody that really knows if they will talk about something, they can talk in depth. And then if somebody asks a question, they will acknowledge that they are not certain. Other people will say that they do know, and they'll make something up. And that is the big difference. If they find themselves outside their circle of competence, they keep quiet or simply say, I don't know. This they utter unapologetically, even with a certain pride. From chauffeurs, we hear every line except this. There we go. So keep on the lookout for people who don't say that they don't know when they don't know. And this has been another really great chapter. And Mladen is saying in the chat, too many chauffeurs explaining COVID-19 and benefits and danger of vaccines against it. I will fully agree with that one. So we are in a time frame where there's a lot of information being thrown out. There are experts, there are non-experts, there are all sorts of different people. And so this chapter is perfect for us to be able to be a little bit more critical to what's being put out there so that we can also make our own value judgments. We're going to make our own decisions on what's going on. And it's important for us from earlier chapters that we've done and other things that I always say to stay critical. So I gave an example of when I went to the doctor to ask about B12 vitamin for vegetarians, and I was told that it is only available in meat products. I did my own research. I found out a little bit more. I didn't rely only on the experts, and I found out that seaweed is a great source of B12. I've been eating that ever since, and I've had no issues with low B12, even though it was never low to start off with, because I was already eating spinach and seaweed and other things that contain B12. So this is a great lesson. That was chapter 16, I think it was. Yes, chapter 17 tomorrow. I'm looking forward to reading to you again and sharing my ideas around it. You control less than you think. And this one's called The Illusion of Control. So I'm looking forward to reading that one for you tomorrow. Have a great day. Thank you for joining. It is really amazing having you. Feel free to comment, leave your thoughts as well. So I appreciate Mladen leaving your comment this morning. It was a great insight into what's going on right now. And that's what life is all about, learning things and implementing it immediately so that you can benefit from that knowledge so that you become an expert rather than a chauffeur knowledge spruiker. Okay, have a great day. And it was wonderful having you today.